Welcome to Slash Forward. In this episode, we're going to keep the good times rolling in terms of creature features with the 2006 film Slither. If you're interested at all in experimental shunting, subscribe to the channel for more information. Let's get to it. We open on a poorly rendered asteroid, screaming toward Earth. It breaks apart as it rips through the atmosphere, touching down quietly somewhere off yonder near this sleepy small town. And this meteor has a creamy center. Then we get some establishing shots showing this town is gutted, but the schools are vibrant beacons of hope as Starla gives an apt lesson in fitness. Outside, she's picked up by Grant, her unlikely partner. And as Bill and Margaret gossip nearby, we learn he burns a candle for Starla, and her relationship with Grant is a bit of a daddy situation. But it's not all rosy as Grant tries to get her engine warmed up, and she recommends he take a little time for himself. Instead, he goes foraging, and even with an unbaited hook, snags a nubile and willing partner.
Number one turn, girl!
Oh, stop!
Who even appreciates his derogatory brand of humor. He thinks better, however, and attempts to hit the reverse button, but becomes distracted by nature. They follow the gooey trail to a slimy egg with a mucousy protuberance that forcibly enters his torso. After marveling at the boundless miracle of nature, he heads home to get his meat on. The next morning, we find Starla doing her best to make amends, which even his alien brain can't resist. This disturbingly leaves Starla positively glowing at the quality of sex that resulted from his seemingly boyish wonder. And Grant spends the day packing meat. Later, we see his vessel is struggling, even though he's eating all this meat, and that he can't bring himself to inseminate his own wife. So while Starla heads to the town hoedown, he goes to mitigate his urges. Bill now has the chance to connect with Starla, and they listen to the speech that represents the official start of hunting season together. And as the town sings and dances, Grant spends some time with his mistress, trying to figure out how his new equipment works, and ultimately finds it works best to just relax and do what comes natural to the body. The next day, we see an outward manifestation of his new Atkins diet.
Oh my god, baby, what happened to your face?
He claims it was a bee sting and that he's already seen the doctor. However, when Starla calls to try to double up his treatment plan, the doctor's confusion reveals the lie. Adding to this, Bill is at her house that evening, needing to ask Grant some questions about Brenda's disappearance, as some of her neighbors saw him out front of her house the night before. Starla decides to check their recently padlocked basement and finds it ripe with the stench of all of Grant's new hobbies and interests. She tries to call Bill back, but is interrupted by Grant, who is subsequently interrupted by Bill. 3 days later, we see the mayor screaming for them to get a handle on this. Luckily, Grant has been feeding on livestock at the local farms in a fairly linear pattern, meaning that next up is the Strudemeyer property. They head there to camp out with the cows. Before long, they witness a creepy crawl up and begin dragging off some choice beef. Starla goes out and tries to talk him back in for treatment for his illness, but it's hard to express a desire to help with guns drawn. So he goes to leave, but a local tough decides to square off with him. He casually splits him open and skitters into the woods. The posse gives chase, following his moist leavings through the underbrush until they arrive at a cabin in the woods. They find Brenda here, well fed, but before they can roll her into the hospital, she explodes. They find themselves fully engulfed in slugs, and the only chance for survival comes from covering one's mouth. While they regroup, we see the Strudemeyer household invaded. Kylie, the eldest, gets a little glimpse into the hive memory before giving her attacker what we refer to as the Judy. She then finds it's too late for her mom and siblings and gets stuck in her truck. At the barn, they're unable to raise anyone on the radio, so Bill goes for his cruiser. The others are engaged in dragging their comrades out of the stank when they wake up, start talking as if they were Grant, desiring meat and spitting acid. When they decide to test her, Starla teaches them not to step to her. Meanwhile, Bill helps Kylie out, but they're descended upon by a mob of brain-addled locals. The Woods gang then runs out, tag-teaming for their own protection, and hopping into the car to take off. Temporarily safe in the car, Kylie takes a moment to explain what she saw when she was part of the collective, allowing them to surmise that destroying Grant will remedy the entire situation. In defiance of their hopes and dreams, they find the situation inside city limits no better, and quickly lose the protection of the car. Starla and Jack are dragged off, but Bill and Kylie manage to get out. Bill's plan is to get at the contraband grenade in the station to use on Grant. But first, there's the matter of the zombie deer, a situation from which he's extricated thanks to Kylie. Meanwhile, Starla is ceremoniously prepared, as Jack is unceremoniously dragged to the feedlot. They use this to point them in the general direction of home base. As they make their way there, Starla stashes a hairbrush and ventures downstairs. She finds the collective obsessed with her and Grant having amassed an enviable girth, thanks to the minions merging with him, shunting style. She tries to convince him her heart is pure, talking her way into his good graces and inching close enough to violently betray him. Bill then presents himself in true savior fashion, only to be cast aside by a massive tentacle. But when Grant goes to double penetrate him, he manages to reverse the flow with the propane tank, resulting in a messy explosion. Bill then takes just a moment to awkwardly coax seminal fluid from his open chest wound, and they emerge to find the nightmare over, as the true nightmare of cleaning up an entire town of dead bodies just begins. Slither was a fun addition to the hive-mind alien invasion movie genre. While it doesn't necessarily add anything new, it was put together well and manages to avoid the critical error of being boring. If you enjoyed the video, I'd love for you to become a part of the channel by subscribing. Thanks for watching.